Each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. Buddha. I remember the first time I read this line from the Buddhist teachings. I was in my 20s, waking up in a tiny rented room with more worries than dreams. The bills stacked on my table felt heavier than the blanket that covered me. And yet this sentence struck me. We are born again each morning. Could it really be that simple, that no matter how bad yesterday was, I had permission to begin again today? That realization felt like a hand on my shoulder, reminding me that life is not an endless punishment, but a series of fresh starts. So often we wake up already defeated. Our first thoughts are, I'm still tired, I have too much to do, I wish I could just stay in bed. That's the default setting for so many of us. But Buddhist teachings invite us to look at mornings differently, not as a continuation of yesterday's mess, but as a blank canvas. The question is, what do we choose to paint on it? Through years of practice, I've learned 3 things can change everything: gratitude, mindfulness, and how we talk to ourselves. They sound simple, but when lived sincerely, they have the power to completely shift our energy for the day. Gratitude is not about pretending life is perfect. It's about recognizing that even in the middle of the chaos, something is still holding us up. A few years ago, a close friend of mine lost his job unexpectedly. He had 2 kids and a mortgage, and I could see the weight in his eyes every time we met. But what surprised me was the ritual he began each morning. Instead of letting panic consume him, he would sit at the kitchen table with his kids, pour them cereal, and whisper to himself, "Thank you that they are healthy. Thank you that we still have this table, this meal, this morning together." Did it magically pay his bills? Of course not. But what it did was keep despair from swallowing him whole. Gratitude became the anchor that helped him survive the storm. This is why Buddhist teachings place so much emphasis on gratitude, not as a shallow optimism, but as a way of shifting the heart from scarcity to abundance. When you wake up and say, "I don't have enough," your whole day becomes a fight. But if you begin with "thank you," suddenly you are not at war with life, you are in partnership with it. Try this tomorrow. When you wake, before you check your phone, take 3 breaths and name 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be grand. Maybe it's your morning coffee, the roof above your head, or the simple fact that you are still breathing. Notice how it changes the tone of your morning. Gratitude doesn't erase your struggles, but it softens the way you carry them. Even when we practice gratitude, our minds are restless creatures. They drag us into the mistakes of yesterday or the deadlines of tomorrow. Mindfulness, as taught in Buddhist teachings, is the gentle art of returning home, to the present where life is actually happening. I once worked with a woman who confessed that she couldn't even drink her morning coffee without her mind racing through emails, bills, and unfinished conversations. She said, "By the time I finish my coffee, I don't even remember tasting it." That's what distraction does. It robs us of the very moments that could restore us. So I asked her to try something different the next morning, to hold her cup of coffee with both hands, close her eyes for a second, feel the warmth, and take the first sip in silence. She told me later, "It was the best coffee I've ever had, not because the coffee changed, but because I was finally there for it." That's mindfulness. It's not about sitting on a mountaintop for hours. It's about being fully present for the ordinary. When you brush your teeth, just brush your teeth. When you walk to the bus stop, just walk. The mind will wander, that's natural. The practice is noticing it and gently returning again and again. And here's the thing, mindfulness is not just peaceful, it's energizing. Think of your mind as a phone with 20 apps running in the background. No wonder it's drained before noon. Mindfulness is like closing those apps. Suddenly, all that wasted energy returns and you feel alive again. Of all the voices we hear in a day, the most influential is the one inside our own head. Buddhist teachings remind us, what we think we become. And yet, most of us speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to a friend. I remember mentoring a young man who constantly told himself he was a failure. He had internalized every criticism he'd ever received. By the time he spoke to me, he didn't even notice the cruelty of his own words. It had become his background music. I asked him, if your best friend spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would you keep them in your life? He paused, and tears welled in his eyes. No, he whispered. That moment was a turning point. He began experimenting with replacing the insults with affirmations. I am capable, I am learning, I am enough. At first, he said it felt ridiculous, like lying. But over months, the affirmations became less foreign and more like a lifeline. His confidence grew not because the world suddenly applauded him, but because he stopped being his own worst enemy. Here's what I've learned. Your inner voice sets the tone for your entire day. If you start the morning by telling yourself, I'm already behind, I'm not good enough, I'll never make it, your day drags under that weight. But if you wake and tell yourself, I am worthy, I am strong, I can try again, you give yourself a chance to rise. Positive self-talk is not delusion, it's direction. It points your heart toward growth instead of despair. When gratitude, mindfulness, and kind self-talk come together, they create more than just good mornings. They create resilient lives. Gratitude shifts your perspective, mindfulness brings you home, and compassionate words rebuild your relationship with yourself. These are not rituals reserved for monks in temples. They are practices for you and me here and now, in our kitchens, in our commutes, in our messy, beautiful human lives. So tomorrow morning, try it. Whisper thanks for something simple. Be fully present for your first sip of water or coffee, and speak to yourself with kindness instead of cruelty. Notice how the energy of your day transforms. And if this reflection touched something inside you, I'd love for you to join this journey. Subscribe to Infinite Buddhist Teachings, share this with someone who needs a gentle reminder, or simply leave your thoughts below. Because every morning is a new chance, not just for you, but for all of us walking this path together.